Hello and welcome back to the Shmuseum, where today I'd like to talk about a topic that comes up very frequently, to be honest, when it comes to collecting cars and having a garage filled with some very special machines, the balance of enjoyment versus investment of supercars, because this is something a lot of people have talked about, particularly over the last, let's say, 10 years or so, when the automotive industry has very much changed. Many cars that 10 years ago people had very little interest in have now become worth extortionate amounts of money, and something that, well, I think you know my overall opinion towards with what you see me doing with the various cars that I have in the collection, particularly things like the Ford GT. Now, I guess it goes without really having to say that from an investment point of view, with a car like that, if you wanted it to be worth the most money possible, you would probably buy the car, take delivery, never ever drive it, keep it on completely 0 miles, just only let it go out for servicing once a year to follow the schedule, to have all of the main dealer stamps or whatever it might be, depending on the particular car, and probably never to show it or share it anywhere. To have the car behind the scenes, tuck it away, and at some point in the future, down the line, it might surface up, pop it in an auction, nobody knows it exists, and all of a sudden your car is worth an awful lot of money. For me though, that's not very much fun. It's much more fun to drive a car, to use it, to enjoy it, to use cars as they're intended, to build the memories, to grow the connection with it. And when it's something like, let's say, the Ford GT, to do all of these insane trips, to travel around the world quite literally with it, Germany, Sardinia, Monaco, across to the USA, New York, Las Vegas, Miami, Los Angeles, San Francisco, to do everything with the car, to build up that connection with it, making it so much more, I think, exciting. And at the end of the day, that's what things like these are built for. And the SLS is probably, out of all of my cars, the biggest example we could have of this. And they're all just under these cheapy covers at the moment while we make some progress with the dust and things going here at the Shmuseum at the moment. But when I chose to respray this, the overwhelming questions were all about, what about the value? Aren't you destroying the value? What's going to happen to it down the line? And this was one of those cars for me that had always been a poster car. It had always been something that I was, like dreaming about, but at the time it came out back in 2013, would never have been possible. And obviously I was thinking at the time I purchased it, and it looked great in silver, don't get me wrong, the Himalaya grey, it was very, very, very nice with the black wheels, with the silver lip, the original specification. But I was thinking, over the next couple of years, I'm going to take this car everywhere. The intention, obviously, before 2020 really got underway and everything went upside down, was to take it to the USA, to take part in the Gumball 3000 rally, to take it across Europe, do track days, go do some laps of the Nürburgring, do tons of miles, daily drive the car, do the Rentec upgrade package, do a whole load of modifications and unique things to it, as well as respraying it. So safe to say that if you look at that as a whole package, this car's value, we could say, is the value to me in how personal it is and the memories that I've built with it. If I had wanted a car to be worth the most money possible, I probably would have bought a 0 mileage right-hand drive car, never driven it, never shared it with you guys, never made any videos with it, and nobody would ever know it existed. But I think it's almost criminal to do that with these kind of cars. They're built to be driven. A car like this is developed, engineered, tested at the Nürburgring in anger. It's what it's all about. And when you do something as dramatic as, let's say, changing the color and taking this to the gorgeous Mystic Blue, there's obviously a lot of work involved in that. And that's why, like with the GT Black Series, this went up the chart well to have it done at the finest possible standards to make sure that we retain that quality and reliability and there are no issues from it. And that's been the result with this. There's been absolutely nothing in the entire, 12,000, 13,000 or so miles I've done since that's gone wrong in any form to do with having taken it apart to do the respray. The finishing quality is absolutely perfect, and the result for me of having a car in a unique specification with the proper quality of paint has been just something, I think, totally surreal. It makes it so special to me, and that's what it's about. This isn't a car I want to sell, like the Ford GT, like the GT Black Series. These are cars that I want to hold on to really long term. So when it comes to this enjoyment versus investment balance, the enjoyment is where all of the value comes from. Maybe one day, this, decades and decades down the line, something has to happen to the car. But I think one of the fun stories then is how well this is all documented. Everything I've done with this car has been shared with you guys, I guess 20, 30, 40 videos, I'm not even sure, across the Shmee150 channel and here on the Shmuseum channel as well, of everything that I've ever done. And yes, there are things at the moment that need a little bit of work. We again have this problem. The little piece of plastic that we have here under the bottom, it's not expensive. I think it's about 30, 40 euros or something. But basically what happens, and it's maybe a great story, what happens here is that if you drive the SLS Black Series around the Nürburgring, you end up going through the carousel, the famous corner with all of the concrete slabs. We have a very big, heavy engine up front, which obviously on a left-hand corner is pushing the weight balance out to the right, which means that the front right corner touches down to the ground, and this, which is presumably a little aero piece that attaches underneath the carbon front splitter, basically catches and snaps off. So it's almost like a memento. I've replaced that about 3 or 4 times, but then I get keen to go back to the Nürburgring with it again, and it happens again. But those memories, those photos, those moments, the sound that this thing makes are, to me, again, as I said, what really creates, how special the car is overall. And as we, I guess, continue around the 675 LT Spider, again, same story. Perhaps a 0 mileage delivery mile car in a generic spec would be worth a tiny bit more, but not a lot more. And I've done 17,000 miles, and think how much fun I've had doing that, driving through Bosnia and Montenegro and Croatia and the north of Spain and all around the UK, and a ton of different events, and to the south of France, and you name it, it's been all around. And the same story with the GT8. A very unique spec always makes a car identifiable, and sometimes in terms of value at least, an identifiable car is actually not necessarily the best thing. It depends. It's always going to be a case of, if you wanted to sell a car, is there a buyer out there who wants that exact specification, who wants a car in that color scheme, who wants a car that looks exactly like that? And if you rewind back 20 years, 30 years, cars weren't very adventurously spec'd, we could say. They were all often, a new Ferrari and F40, all red, an F50, a couple of different colors, yellows, blacks, and silver ones amongst all of the red cars, but not really a lot. Even EB110s, blue or silver, a couple in bright colors, which have actually reached strong auction prices since. But there wasn't the same variety that we have now, and that's definitely going to change things up as we go ahead with these kind of cars. And like I say, for me, these are not, let's say, for investment. If they were, I wouldn't be doing everything that I am doing with them. Perhaps the closest I get to an investment car, we could say, is the Heritage Focus RS. Now, it's a bit of a funny story, because when I bought my first Mark III RS, the nitrous blue launch color car, I bought it very much as a car to daily drive. With the Ford GT allocation secured, I was thinking it would be fun to have a Ford Performance hot hatch for the daily business, and also to have it actually as my run around up in Scotland. I was spending a lot of time up there, the weather's not so good, the roads are tight and twisty, perfect 4-wheel drive, little hot hatch. Then the red edition was coming along, decided to go for the limited edition version. Then decided to make that a bit of a project when they announced that the Heritage was going to come as well. And I've done a few miles with it. It's on about 5,500, so it's not, let's say, a 0 mileage car. I've slid it around sideways in the snow, but it's a car I want to keep a hold of still, just because of those memories across the 3 Focuses, about having the family of the fast Fords with the GT and the GT500 when that's over here. So it adds a bit of a personal element to that as well. And while, I could daily drive it and do 20, 30, 40,000 miles over the next couple of years, I think I want to drive it. I don't want to completely ruin it, let's say. It feels special. It feels very special. A thing that's interesting with the market right now, though, is when we come to the G-Wagon. So what's happening at the moment is a shortage of supply of new cars. New cars like the G63, stuff that's currently in production because of components, global shipping, parts, all sorts of different things. And it means a car like this, which is obviously not a car that I bought to keep forever. It's not that kind of car. It's a car that I've used for a lot of practical purposes, trailering cars around, lugging stuff around in the back. But I've owned it for 2 years and 3 or 4 months now. Time is quickly marching by. I've done 14 or 15,000 miles. But because if you want a new one, you can't get a new one, it means a car like this is now worth pretty much what I bought it for, which is absolutely crazy. So you could argue from an investment point of view, that's been a very solid place to put money because I've enjoyed it along the way, had tons of fun, used it for lots of different things, made loads of videos, which I think you guys have enjoyed as well, done some modifications, done the Topaz skin, the Akrapovic exhaust, visited my friend Lucas, now at Opus, and did some upgrades with it there as well. And it hasn't lost any money. So it's basically the perfect investment. On the flip side, the Taycan, not so good, but we can talk about that in a moment. So cars like this, modern cars, not particularly standout cars, have all suddenly become worth a lot of money. But one of the funny things about this, if you rewind back actually, and with lots of the limited stuff, this is quite relevant. When, let's say, the Porsche 911 997.2 GT3 RS 4-litre came out, yes, quite the name, but I'm sure you know the car, limited edition, run, manual, Metzger engine, larger engine, very, very awesome car. I've never actually driven one though. When they came out, they depreciated. If you wanted to sell one after 6 months or a year, you didn't get your money back. You could even get money off buying one, I think, from new, because there wasn't this same mentality that we have now, particularly obviously the anomaly of this current year has changed everything a lot, but it was all very different a couple of years ago, and things like 911s of different generations, the 996s, 993s, etc. Some of them had gone up already in value, but a lot of them were just cars. They lost money, and that's what they did. And things like even the SLS, the regular SLS, when it was new, depreciated like a stone. They fell off a cliff. It was about, I think in the UK, 180, 190,000 pounds new when you'd done the specification. And a car that was a year old was 110, 120. Those same cars now are actually back at about list price again for a regular SLS AMG, which is pretty mad when you think about it. Now, cars that more recently have lost a lot of money, we can say, are things like the AMG GTs, GTR Roadster, probably down a bit on when it was new, but less due to the current situation, the current market climate, and where everything's at has affected this quite dramatically. And therefore, I guess even after a year or two, these won't really have lost a lot of money. For me, I do actually see this a bit as a keeper because of doing the seats and doing some of the upgrades, and it's just a fantastic car to drive. So that, in terms of enjoyment versus investment, is a car that, you know, I want to enjoy, but I'm conscious a bit of the value. Maybe one day I end up selling it. I don't really know. Obviously, a car I'm never going to sell is the V8 Vantage Roadster. This at the time I bought it originally, was probably not the smartest of investments, but I bought it as a car to drive. It was my only car actually when I bought it originally back in 2010. So it was a car that I bought to discover the car world, to go to events, to go on road trips, to take it to France, to go to Paris, to the south of France, to Monaco and the Riviera, and absolutely loved. But like I say, from an investment point of view, I actually lost a lot of money on it, and ironically bought it back recently for very close to what I sold it for 9 years prior. And that's one of the crazy things, isn't it, about the market in general, that cars like this don't exist anymore. This old school, large, naturally aspirated engine, more involving, and although this has the paddle shift gearbox, it's still more involving than a modern dual clutch, for example, and closer in feel to a manual. And they've all basically shot up in value and been dragged up, because as the market's moved, if you think about it, when the Bugatti Veyron came out and it was a €1 million car with 1,000 horsepower less than 20 years ago, that was the only car you could buy that broke its price tag into 7 figures, other than obviously classics and things on the market, but the only car that had ever gone up to that price range from new. Now, if you want to spend 7 figures on a car, whether that's dollars, pounds or euros, I think there are about 40 different cars from various manufacturers you can choose between at that price bracket. So as the market has moved up in terms of new car pricing, a bit like iPhones getting more expensive all the time, the latest one costs an absolute fortune. With cars have moved up, all the older stuff drags up a little bit with it, and that's kept cars like this, especially cars that have been well maintained and well looked after, obviously with some value over time as it's gone by, and as I think they get more appealing, especially as things to collect. Who knows what the future is going to actually have in store and enable us to do with them, but it's certainly, I suppose, keeping something like this, I imagine down the line, worth effectively what I've paid for it now for quite a long time. Now, if we come back over to this side and we talk Taycan, I actually didn't expect that the Taycan was going to depreciate as much as it has. I thought, being quite an early adopter of a Taycan, Porsche's flagship EV, especially in the Turbo S format, that it might hold a little bit more value. But the best part of a year in, that's probably already down about £25,000, which is kind of crazy, because with this shortage of new cars and, you know, something like the Cayman GT4, my GT4 is actually probably up a significant amount since I bought it. And that is one of the bonkers things. I've only owned it for a couple of months and offers are in that are higher than I paid for it. So I don't know, you know, what I'll do with that, given I'm hoping on a GT4 RS next year. And who knows what will happen with that? I'm sure the start price will be very high. So it's interesting that there isn't so much perhaps demand for these versus the number of them that are being produced. And maybe that's a byproduct actually of it being, let's say, the flagship electric car, outside obviously of the Avaya, the Battista and the Nevera, which are slightly different prospects. So being a flagship electric car, in many ways, like with a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce, encourages people to purchase them new, and therefore the used values aren't quite so high at the end of the day. And it will be interesting to see what those other manufacturers do in terms of electric car models down the line. And who even knows what the value in the future of an electric car is even going to be. With batteries, will they last? What about the hybrids? You know, costs at the moment for cars like the LaFerrari, the 918 and the P1 have actually fallen quite dramatically as more people have started to realize that the maintenance of those cars, particularly with the battery packs, is actually excruciatingly expensive. They are very, very costly things to manage and to keep on the road. So the Senna, for example, obviously I talked recently when I drove my friend's P1 a bit more about whether, you know, a P1 in the garage would complement the Senna. One interesting direct comparison I can give you is when it comes to McLaren and the extended warranties for Senna versus P1, the Senna's warranty is literally half the price of the P1, which tells you a bit more about what the running costs of the cars are going to be. And obviously that influences the values. So that significantly softened the values of cars like the LaFerrari in this recent period. Having launched in 2013, they're probably hitting their peak for the early cars being flipped with 0 miles, etc. And then maybe through to 2018, 2019 or so, then obviously everything happened. People think a little bit more carefully about it. A couple of cars are forced onto the market because the owners of the cars need out of them as quickly as possible for their businesses or for whatever else it might be. But then you have more people thinking, wait a second, if every 2 or 3 years, if I haven't used the car much, the battery might have gone and I might need to spend £100,000, dollars or euros to fix it. Actually, that's a bit of a problem. So when you're buying hybrids in the future, I think what's going to be really fascinating is whether it's actually going to be better to purchase a car that has significant or at least regular mileage on it, because that means it will have been kept in better running order than a car that's, let's say, did a lot of miles in its first year and then never moved again. And we try and do that here with the team at the Shmuseum. We try and make sure every car is driven as regularly as possible and goes out even for a short run, because I personally don't believe in trying to preserve the mileage and keeping cars at 0. I mean, I don't want, let's say, a car like the GT or Senna to do 20,000 miles in 1 year. They're too special for that, and it takes away from some of the experience, even things like wearing down the entry sills and the steering wheel and the stone chips that they might pick up. Obviously with PPF, that's massively minimized, but all of the small little things that could happen take away from the feeling of how special it is. But I don't want a car to be on 0 miles. I want it to feel like it's done something, and, you know, every time jumping back behind the wheel is the memory of you know, oh, I remember when I drove the Senna at Spa. Oh, what I remember when I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge in the Ford GT. Oh, I remember when I was flat out at 200 miles an hour on the Autobahn in the SLS, or when I was going around the Nürburgring for a full day, battering, I think, about 13, 14 laps in 1 day in the 675 LT, or driving up in Scotland in the Vantage GT8. All of these memories that come flooding back each and every time I'm around one of the cars. And that, to me, is where this enjoyment versus investment discussion really comes to an end. For me, it's about purchasing cars really to enjoy to the max, being a little bit conscious of keeping them running properly. And it's one of the reasons I've talked about before about shying away from purchasing a full-on hypercar of the modern era, you know, something at, let's say, AMG 1 or Bugatti Chiron price, because I wouldn't be able to enjoy it, because I'd be worrying too much about the investment and about how much money I personally would have tied up in it, which would be, let's say, for me, stretching it too far, and so I wouldn't get the same enjoyment as with these kind of cars. And when it comes to, you know, the new cars arriving in the garage, something like the Huracan STO, for example, my Lamborghini that should be here really very soon, really very soon. Let's go with really very soon. Something like that to me is a car I'm not entirely sure yet. So, you know, in its early stages, in its infancy in the collection, obviously I want to enjoy it as much as possible, but I will be aware of what it's worth, because I don't know yet if it will become a permanent Shmeemobile. I need to build that bond with the car, build those memories, build those experiences. And obviously, if I want to sell it in a couple of years' time, I need to be aware of what it will be worth. But then I want to have the mixture of the videos and balances and fun and moments with the car itself. So we'll see how something like that evolves. I think something like the SF90 Stradale, I've decided already that I'm going to be keeping that car because it's my first ever new Ferrari, and I feel as a car guy, that's quite a special moment in its own right to have gone through that process, to have ordered my own new Ferrari. That was something certainly when I was, you know, so tall, I was dreaming of one day maybe that would be possible, never really thinking it would be. So that's a pinch moment in many possible ways, kind of like with the GT, being lucky enough to have secured the allocation for that. There was immense demand. I think Ford actually said that they had 13.5 applicants per car for the Ford GT, which is just crazy when you think about it. And I still feel very thankful to have been chosen to be able to purchase one, even at great expense. They were very expensive cars, but hey, that's one of the mad things. It's still worth, you know, a lot of money. So it's, you know, a great investment as well as a great personal, you know, story as well, we could say. So I think you know my point. When it comes to something like the GT Black Series, if I was going for full investment and maximum money, from the day I took delivery in graphite grey Magno, you'd never have seen the car. I would probably have tucked it away on 0 miles or put it straight on the market for £150,000 over what I bought it for, and that would be the end of story. But for me, that's not what this is about. This is about bringing you guys along for the adventure, as we've used on the Shmee150 channel, the tagline, living the supercar dream, and that's what it's about. And in this case, making it my car in solar beam yellow. We'll take it to Germany, we'll go to Opus, we'll do some upgrades, we'll make it unique, we'll make it special, living the dream with the car, do some Nürburgring laps, do some VMAX runs, maybe take it around the world, maybe to the Middle East, maybe to the USA, do some rallies with it, do everything with it, because that's what it's about. That's what it's all about for me, being lucky enough to purchase the car. And at the end of the day, if I flipped it and made some money, what would I want to do with the money? Go and buy another car? It makes no sense. I might as well enjoy the car that I'm lucky to have been able to secure. So there are my thoughts. I hope that's been interesting in some ways. I know a lot of you guys ask me regularly about what I think in terms of investment, in terms of car values, in terms of flipping, in terms of what's, you know, ultimately what I like in this context. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching here on the Shmuseum channel. Until next time.